Okay, I've been poring over this because this is right in my wheelhouse. This is, it affects me. I own a Harley Davidson. I'm on the roads, not tons, but I'm a recreational rider on the roads. I don't use it for traditional commuting, but boy, my friends and I were out on a lot of rides, especially, obviously in the summertime. And so I've been looking over HB 410, really wanting to understand it, look things up on lane splitting. I've read the articles that have been out there on KSL.com. California-style motorcycle law could be coming to Utah. I've been trying to educate myself, and finally I went, well, duh. Call the guy who really understands the legislation and is proposing it, and that's Representative Gage Froerer, who's on the line with us right now. Representative, thank you for being part of today's Doug Wright Show.
Hi, Doug. Great to be with you again.
I have to tell you right out of the chute, I'm looking forward to this conversation because right now this is giving me heartburn. Make me feel better. What is this law all about?
Well, the first thing that we need to talk about is this is not the California version of lane splitting. This will be the Utah version of lane splitting. Obviously, there's a huge difference. What this attempts to do really is allow those motorcycle riders that are comfortable with splitting lanes or going between traffic, the ability to do so. If you look at the stats worldwide, and again, the only data that we can really share is those in Europe, Asia, et cetera, because California is the only state in the union that currently allows it. But if you look at the stats, all the stats point to fewer fatalities. One of the primary concerns riding motorcycles, and I'm like you, Doug, I ride recreational Harley, and people like you and I may not feel comfortable doing this, but there's commuters that ride motorcycles every day to work back and forth. That's their primary form of transportation. So what this does is give them the ability to avoid situations that puts them in danger, rear-end collisions, go down 62% in these countries that have it. The people that use this typically have 65% less issues with alcohol-related accidents, and, it goes on. So the data is firmly out there, and I think the committee that we talked to yesterday saw the data and said, let's look at the data. Let's not just look at what comes to mind, and let's not think what California, when somebody speeds by at 40, 50 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour, that's not what this attempts to do at all.
Yeah, I envision, and I've already admitted to just immediate heartburn over this, because what comes to mind for me, Representative, is that guy traditionally on a more sporty bullet bike is one of the descriptions, who's just weaving in and out of traffic, going right between vehicles and just being a jerk out there on the roads. I have to admit that's what comes to mind. And plus, and maybe it's just because of my level of expertise, I consider myself to be a fairly responsible and a fairly good rider, and kind of going between vehicles on highways, byways, and so on. That makes me a little nervous. Maybe it's just my skill level talking here.
No, and I that's a great concern, and we've addressed that by saying, look, if traffic is going faster than right now, it's 40 miles an hour. It's not allowed at all. So if you're traveling 50, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour down the freeway, then that doesn't happen. It's not allowed. So the maximum speed right now would be 40 miles an hour. The only allowable speed that you could increase over that to pass would be 10 miles an hour. So that basically says if it's 30 miles an hour traffic, you could be going 40 at a maximum.
Are there concerns about people changing lanes, even sometimes in a stop-and-go environment? One of the things that usually causes wrecks and gives people heartburn is when a vehicle, a traditional four-wheel vehicle, is changing lanes, trying to gain that 25-foot advantage while everything's kind of stop-and-go.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one question that we're still dealing with and brought up by the insurance industry as far as where does the liability fall. And I don't think there's any question that the liability at the end of the day has to end up with the motorcycle rider, that they're responsible for their actions to make sure that they can make that maneuver in a safe and efficient manner without harming themselves or somebody else.
Right. What is the temperament on the Hill for this?
Well, it was better than I expected in committee. My intent really is to have a discussion on the floor work with the Department of Public Safety on this to come up with some regulations, some rules that make people feel comfortable with it. At the same time, give the ability for the motorcyclists to protect themselves, to put them in a safer situation.
Yeah.
You know as well as I do, Doug, that when you're riding a motorcycle, a lot of times it's incumbent upon the motorcycle rider to put themselves in a position they feel safe with, whether that's at an intersection, going through, proceeding through a yellow light, all sorts of things. So this really just says, look, let's give the motorcycle a little more control over his environment, rather than have him sit at a stoplight or in a traffic jam and have somebody come up behind us not paying attention.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier when we were talking with Heather of Harley-Davidson, she puts together their safety training courses. And, most of us have either had a close call or we know somebody. I had a friend who flew 50 feet down the road after somebody rear-ended him on his back. This was back in the day. It was on a Kawasaki 450. And, oh, my goodness. We all know, we've heard of those stories. Some of us have experienced those stories. And, I'm with you. I want motorcycles to have all the advantage we possibly can because there are many disadvantages. There are great joys in riding a motorcycle, but you are more vulnerable. But I don't know. I've got to digest this one. One quick update, maybe you can tell me. And the law that is being kicked around on Capitol Hill to extend the mandatory helmet to the age of 21. Where is that right now? What's happening with that bill?
Well, that was actually in my Business and Labor Committee I sit on this morning. It was scheduled, but we ended up debating the alcohol modifications too long. So that's going to be put off until Friday, Doug. But that will be a lively discussion, I'm sure. Yeah,
I'm sure, because I have friends who are motorcycle riders who just are adamant that you should be required to wear a helmet. I have others who say you absolutely should wear a helmet but not be required, and other people who just go nuts. It's the do-rag, the hair flying, and everything else. So that will be a lively discussion.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's too much gray area there. Either you are for it or you're not for it.
Well, that's
people
true.
Make that decision. So, yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you joining us today, and I'm going to continue digesting this, and we'll keep an eye on it and keep me posted on the progress. Okay?
I'll keep an eye on it. I wouldn't lose too much sleep over this right now. I think we're trying to come up with some good policy that makes sense, and this will probably be discussed through the summer, Doug.
All right. Hey, I appreciate you joining us today. Gage Froerer with us here at KSL News Radio, and we're talking about and I appreciated the representative saying, no, it's not really California style. This will be Utah style. It will be toned down considerably. But even with that description, I have to tell you, I'll not lose sleep over it right now, but it gives me heartburn. All right, we have a lot more coming up on today's Doug.